Hello and welcome to episode 98 of Linux After Dark. I'm Joe.
I'm Chris.
I'm Gary.
And I'm May.
Welcome back all. It's the £50 Linux Machine Challenge. So, I said to you all, you have a £50 budget, that is 50 GBP, or about 65 US dollars, to buy the best Linux machine you can find. And it was deliberately vague, and you lot were like, I need more rules. And I said, no, just get the best Linux machine you can find for 50 quid. And I suppose we should start by thanking our patrons because you're paying for this. Thank you very much. So, the question is, what did we get? Gary, what did you get?
I was boring, and I got a ThinkPad L380.
Oh, nice.
I am recording on one of those right now.
Did you pay more than 50 quid for it, Chris?
I did because I bought it a while ago, but I think I paid, a bit more, but we'll talk about that maybe later.
That is very boring, Gary, but I'm also quite envious. I would quite like an L380. So I suppose well done and also terribly done at the same time.
You didn't say it had to be exciting. You just said a good machine for 50 quid.
Yeah, and that is good. All right, May, what did you get?
I got an HP ProBook 640 G4 with the i5 and 8 gigs RAM.
And what generation is that then?
That is an 8th gen i5.
Okay, similar to Gary then. Chris, please tell me you got something more exciting.
I got a evil post office bastard Fujitsu D556/2, which has a 7th gen i5 in it, 8 gigs of RAM.
I was looking at Fujitsu's, but I know that they're a piece of shit, all of them.
Well, that's funny. I was looking at a Fujitsu, a D538 with an 8400, so an 8th gen i5. This is a little small form factor desktop machine. And that was 42 quid.
Right.
But I thought that's far too boring, although it is called Esprimo, so it must be good. Esprimo.
I just completely forgot that Fujitsu existed and probably ruled them out of my mind for the...
Yeah, so does everyone else.
For better or worse, yeah.
All right, Joe, out with it then.
Well, before I tell you what it is, there's something a bit concerning about it. When I turn it on, it makes this weird noise. 2013 iMac, baby.
Oh.
Wow. I almost managed to get for £0 a 2012 27-inch iMac, which I think might have beaten you, Joe. But alas, I didn't manage to retire it in time.
Right. Well, this is a late 2013, 21.5 inch, not a mid 2013. And the importance of that will become clear later. So I win because mine is by far the coolest. You lot got boring bullshit and I got something cool as fuck.
I mean, is a 12-year-old iMac cool? I don't know.
The screens are still great, right? That's the one bit of to and fro we had as we were making purchasing decisions. May brought up, does this include peripherals? Because if you buy a laptop or an iMac, it's completely ready to go. Whereas I'm making the Raspberry Pi assumption that everyone has input devices and a display and everything else. So, but we haven't put down how much we actually paid and the rest of it yet. So I didn't go right to the edge of my budget just by buying the box.
Well, I paid £50 exactly.
Oh, right. And it's spinning Rust?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
But with no keyboard and mouse, I had to supply that. But I had them anyway.
So I have a watch on eBay for desktop PCs that are listed at £50 or below anyway. And just before and just after the purchasing window, I could have easily got loads of 8th gen machines. But the gods of podcasting just dried up the supplies in the whole window that I had to purchase and get something set up.
I know. It was like really dry here too. Like, where are all of the computers?
I decided to go for realistically, repeatably purchasable, not a unicorn or a moonshot that you might get occasionally. I'm confident that anyone listening could get the same spec under £50, leaving room for upgrades to make it as usable as that spec could be.
But the story of how you just got that one unique thing is also really cool, though.
It is. That's true.
Well, I'm not going to lie, Chris. I just lowballed people on the thing I wanted until they accept it. So maybe that makes me a scumbag. Who knows?
I tried this, and I mean, I was being a bit... I tried to get a 10th gen machine, and I think the person would have just laughed as I bid. But it was on at like 70, so I thought, 49, 50, just take it as is. No, it wasn't working. I was soiling my eBay reputation left, right, and centre.
Well, a friend of mine has this theory that if you're not ashamed of your first offer, then it's not low enough and you should take a tenner off. So I fully embraced that for this challenge.
Did it work?
Yes, it did.
Oh.
In fact, my offer was accepted very quickly, so maybe I should have taken even more off.
I was getting nervous, basically. I'd just before this seen a nice little 8th gen Dell machine for like 47 quid. And then there were 10 of them and somebody bought all 10.
Uh-huh.
So then I thought, that's surely going to happen again. And then Joe was like, Chris, have you bought something? No. Have you bought something? You have to actually use it. Otherwise, there's no point. So I just had to slap down what was available.
It is worth noting that we only had a couple of weeks to do this. It was very much a situation of, you've got $50 and you need a computer now. What do you do? Or not $50, $65, but you know.
Well, I decided that if I was going to win this challenge, eBay was not it, because eBay's too expensive. I know that sounds like a really weird thing to say because eBay's where you get cheap old computers, but I know that some of us will not have anything to do with Meta, but Facebook Marketplace, I'm telling you, that is where you get dirt cheap stuff because it's local, so there's no postage, which is a big plus. And I'm telling you, there's loads and loads of good cheap hardware on Facebook Marketplace, at least in London.
I do believe you.
I was going to say, maybe in London there is, because out here I was getting Core 2 Duo or first or second gen i5 machines for £75 to £100. So there's no way that I was using Marketplace for it here.
Being able to walk away, though, Joe, is useful because mine arrived in a giant box with nothing. So I had it delivered to my local supermarket. And I picked it up and I was like, oh, it looks quite well packed. I picked it up and heard a clunk. And I was like, right, this has just been put in a void of air. And because it's like a solidly built desktop that was put together properly, it was fine. But having computers shipped badly packed is very risky, especially laptops. Like I've had them arrive with a hole where someone's foot's gone through the top and you're like, oh God, I've had to film myself opening the box just in case and all sorts of stuff like that. And I think you're right. There's lots of people that don't even know what they're selling. Like they just suddenly have a computer and they might put the wrong specification on. They won't be able to answer any questions. So you can pick stuff up, but it can be a bit weird, I think, sometimes as well, especially going to someone's house to pick it up.
Well, early on in the process, I found a 10th gen, I can't remember what it was, laptop, according to eBay. And there was not really any detail about it, but I did a bit of research and pretty much found out, no, this is a 2nd gen i5 or whatever. And they've just put the details in wrong. I mean, you must have come across quite a lot of that in your searches, people just not knowing what they had.
eBay's a devil for that because it will auto-match things. So the details of the listing will have all of this stuff filled out. And then you look at the actual photos and you're like, wow, that is not at all that specification.
One thing that is really concerning is that, I mean, at least in the US, you don't get good specifications at this price range. You just don't. Because it would take too long for someone well-trained enough to figure out what is a computer to put in the specs at this price that no one does. So if you want to know what resolution screen the thing you're about to buy has, good luck. Unless it's some sealed unit thing like an iMac or some other all-in-one. But even then, if you're buying like a Dell all-in-one, they're going to have different screens at different trim levels.
So you collected yours, Joe. Gary, you collected yours or had it posted or?
Mine was shipped to me, yeah. So It was £6 for the shipping, which actually wasn't too bad. And it arrived in one of those bubble laptop sleeve things with a charger. So can't complain.
But you did pay 50 quid plus the 6 quid, so you blatantly cheated.
This is,
you said buy a computer for 50 quid. I did buy the computer for 50 quid, and I could have driven to Scunthorpe to pick it up, but I chose not to.
People who live in glass houses should not throw stones, so I'm not going to get in on this.
Well, yeah, I paid £50 for my iMac. Whether I spent any more on that, well, maybe that's for part 2. Spoiler, I did. But anyway, I paid £50 for it and it was fine.
But you did have to use petrol to pick it up, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, so that was probably about £6 as well.
No, I wasn't very far away.
£31.20 delivered.
What?
That was mine.
That's a bargain.
Yeah.
Well, it is a 7th gen though, so it's not capable of Windows 11, which means that it's going to be in that bracket below your 8th gen and above.
Exactly. So that was my rationale for my choice, is that if somebody came to me and said, I've only got £50 and I need it to be very good and last, and they're happy to run Linux on it, that's where I would probably land, especially because if it's a small form factor, the 8th gen has less I/O, which we'll come to later on. But this is a realistic, like £30 acquisition to allow you to get RAM upgrades, better storage, etc., if you wanted to. So that's why I went there. So if I can't get the unicorn one bang on the 50, I'm going to go way under it so I have flexibility.
So when I purchased the laptop, 50 Greater British pounds was $67.56 US dollars. And my order, which was the laptop and an SSD to put in it, because I just assumed that people would have a Type-C charger or something that could charge the HP, $66.99.
Pretty spot on then.
But yeah, the three of you have usable machines ostensibly compared to me, which is making a huge assumption that there's just a monitor, keyboard and mouse lying about already. The Raspberry Pi approach to life.
Well, most people have a TV though, right, Chris? So then it basically comes down to an HDMI cable, a keyboard and mouse, which I'm sure you could find in a bin somewhere.
Well, you say that, and we'll again get to it later, but the advantage of getting such a beat-up old piece of crap is that it has VGA, HDMI, DVI, you name it, it's got it for display output.
Do you need an output?
Yeah.
In which case, you can probably go and find some 15-inch TFT in a bin somewhere too.
Exactly.
I think that's fine.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by people who support us with PayPal and Patreon. Go to linuxafterdark.net/support for details of how you can support us too. Patreon supporters have the option to listen to episodes without ads like this. And it's not just this show. There's Late Night Linux for news, discoveries, audience input, and misanthropy, 2.5 admins about system administration, Linux Matters for upbeat, family-friendly adventures, Linux Dev Time about developing with and for Linux, Hybrid Cloud Show for everything private and public cloud, and Ask the Hosts for off-topic questions from you. You can even get some episodes a bit early. We've got a lot going on, and it's only possible because of the people who support us. So if you like what we do and can afford it, it would be great if you could support us too. At linuxafterdark.net/support.
What I kind of want to talk about, though, is like, how did we get there? So for me, I was searching for a week or two, putting in offers on things, like taking your advice of make offers that you feel shameful about. Unfortunately, none of them worked for me. I just had to buy it now in the end. But one thing I did notice, I threw a lot of things on my eBay watch list. And after I'd already made the purchase, of course, I got a lot of offers for lower prices on things. Not a lot at this price. It's usually 5 to 10%-ish. But it can get better as sellers get more desperate to sell their item that they don't want anymore. That is probably a really good tip for people out there, is just watch list the thing. If it doesn't get sold immediately, you're going to get a discount.
One thing I nearly bought was a Giada CCTV box NVR recorder that has 4 HDMI outs and is quite small form factor, but inside is an embedded Ryzen about as powerful as a Ryzen 5 2nd gen with integrated Vega GPU.
Oh,
That would have been really good.
It was £40 and now it's £20, but it's collection only in Yorkshire. So that was the killer. And like, as much as I am very enthusiastic about these challenges, I'm not getting the train to Yorkshire.
But for 20 quid, Chris, you could have got the train fare, bought yourself some lunch, day out with the kids. It'd have been fine.
Well, yeah, this is true, up to Yorkshire. But that is the other angle that I could have come at this from, which is, as we've said many a time before, one of the most fun things about Linux is this is cool, but what else can it do? Like, this is a commodity NVR box that you buy with a set of cameras. Someone has it with no power supply, desperately trying to flog it to get a bit of money, getting that kind of equipment and then going, no, this is a real computer. Look at me playing PlayStation 2 emulation at 2 times resolution, which it could probably do. That is very satisfying, but I couldn't quite find anything that would be like that I could actually get hold of.
Yeah, I do like channels like that, on YouTube. Just, hey, here's this stupid embedded computer. Let's play Doom on it.
Well, because its CCTV box is going to have a pretty decent graphics card, isn't it? Or at least, onboard graphics, whatever.
Something with QuickSync or the equivalent. There's
those overhead in truck cabin PCs that are often on that have 2 Ethernet ports, for example. If you wanted a router, they expect the power from the car battery, so you have to buy like an adapter. But yeah, that kind of thing is what I did toy with. But then I was like, it has to be the right thing, and I just couldn't in the window find. Again, it's the moonshot unicorn thing. You can't always get that stuff, but when you do, it's very satisfying.
The thing I almost bought, and I will read you the eBay auction title, is Celeron N95 Windows 11 Pro 1920 by 1080 IPS Mini HDMI.
Okay, they selling the processor? We selling motherboards now?
So this was, and I will paste the link into our chat just as we record, a Celeron N95, so effectively the N100 just hobbled a little bit, laptop with a 1080p display, some kind of SSD and 16 gig of RAM. Incredible value at £52.04 plus shipping. So I was really gutted, actually, that I didn't win this. Even for outside this challenge, that is a bargain of 52 quid. However, I was getting off of the DLR at the time where the auction finished and couldn't bid up quickly enough because I had no phone reception. But that was the thing I almost bought.
That's the Docklands Light Railway for non-Londoners.
Yes.
For the benefit of this being an audio medium, I'm looking at this listing and it has the dodgiest power brick in shot, which looks like it deserves to power like a Casio music keyboard, like not for a laptop at all.
But what it also does have is Type-C charging, so that would be okay. I just would never use that adapter.
And it's got like a cool Transformers logo on the lid of it as well.
Yeah, but it does look like if I blew too hard in its general direction, the chassis would flex.
Kind of looks like a framework, actually.
The system manufacturer is Shenzhen UDC e-commerce. Yep, Book 2.
So it's definitely going to be supported by FWAP-D then.
It's got a fingerprint sensor?
The baseboard manufacturer is Default String.
I would very much like to have that laptop to play with, so I can see why you were gutted.
Yeah, I mean, for reference, this is called a Gemini laptop, is what I later discovered. So these actually go for a somewhat reasonable amount of money still on Amazon.
Now, the reason I made that noise is because during the huge event we had, these were really shoved down schools' throats to be bought. And you can find endless Reddit threads of people saying, this is absolute guff. Basically, when you needed a remote laptop, you either got like a 10-year-old Acer from charity programs, or you got some of these where, yeah, like kids just type too hard and that's it. The keyboard's broken.
But for 50 quid, could be worse, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, half a terabyte SSD and 16 gigs of RAM.
What? Okay, I thought that said 16 gigs of storage. What the hell?
No. This is a genuine usable laptop for £52.
All right, well, I went into this thinking, right, let's see what laptops I could get. And I couldn't find anything promising. And I thought, I don't want yet another laptop for the stack. And then I looked at desktops and thought, right, okay, I can get an 8th gen i5 or whatever, which I can squeeze at least one hard drive into. I could probably squeeze 2 in a pinch, so I could maybe make a backup box out of it. But that's a bit boring as well. And I thought, what about Macs? So I thought maybe an old MacBook Air. And I was, well, you're looking at like really shit and old for that. Okay, what about some sort of Mac Mini? Well, I've already got an old Mac Mini. I wonder about iMacs. And then I found a bunch of Core 2 Duo ones, and I've had one of them before. It was terrible. And then I discovered on Facebook Marketplace, if you're willing to put up with a cracked screen, then you can actually get a pretty decent one. And I was looking at some 27-inch ones because the 27s come with a desktop class processor. So even though it's like you're looking at sort of 4th gen, it's basically almost equivalent to an 8th gen i5 laptop processor in terms of performance. Obviously, it's going to use a lot more power, but you can actually get a pretty reasonable machine. But then I found one that was a 2013. And this was on Gumtree, I think, which is like our Craigslist. And the seller said that he'd taken it out of his studio, or he'd used it in his studio for a while. And it just said 2013. And there was a little bit of a crack on the bezel from the photo. So I thought, I can put up with that. So I drove about 15 minutes-ish, maybe a bit more, to go and see it. And the address he gave me was a pizza place. I'm like, what? And I looked at it on Street View, and there was a kind of bit round the back that you could park. I said, is that where I'm meeting you? Yeah, that'll do. And so I parked there, sort of, 20% expecting to get stabbed, but it was totally fine, actually. He just turns up with it in a bin bag, a garbage bag, as you would say, mate. And I put it on the roof of my car to check it out, and the crack was actually all across the screen. I was like, oh, for fuck's sake. And I was like, well, it was 40 quid. I thought, well, that gives me 10 quid for upgrades, whatever. So I took it home, turned it on, and remember 2013, right? Mm-hmm. Now, turns out that there was only one mainstream iMac in 2013, the late 2013, which is what I've ended up with, which is the 4570R i5. When I turned it on and checked it out, it was actually a mid-2013 iMac, which is a 4260U, which you'd think, it's a 4th generation i5, it's going to be the same. No, it's about half as much in terms of performance. And it turns out that the mid-2013 iMac was education only. Mm-hmm. And what should have been the clue was the stickers on the back of it that looked like it had been, let's say, thrown out by a college.
Yeah, that was pretty common back then, those education-only models.
Yeah, and so the fact that this had been in his studio, when I challenged him about it, he said, I didn't say that. It's in the listing, man. Anyway, miraculously, about 10 days after I bought it, and after a lot of back and forth, I took it back to him, and he gave me my 40 quid back. And he was a bit moody about it, but again, he didn't stab me. So, job's a good one. And what I actually ended up with has got a few little scratches here and there, and either some dead pixels or something between the screen and the glass, which you can't separate. Well, I don't know, it's a weird little black line, but anyway.
If you buy the wrong item, it has a large chance of something coming inside. But that would only be a problem if something wanted to be in your house.
No, it's fine. It's definitely not that. Well, as we'll talk about next time, I have opened this up, so it's all fine. But yeah, there's my cautionary tale. Make sure that you know exactly what you're buying before you drive there, and be willing to walk away. Is the bottom line. When I saw the big crack across the screen, I should have walked away.
There's a lot of pitfalls that you can have that we haven't hit. Things like BIOS locks and BIOS locks with the no jumper to clear them, and you can't remove the CMOS battery without a programmer to reflash it.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to get rid of that. And people selling at this price point are not going to realize that that's a problem. And I've ended up with machines where I'm like, this is BIOS locked. And they're like, yeah, it still works. It's like, no, you don't understand. I need my money back.
I was actually looking at one that said it, I can't remember what it was now. It was some sort of machine, and it said it was BIOS locked, but it would still boot from USB. So it was fine. But I was like, no, I'm not taking a risk on that.
No. I mean, the one I bought has a jumper. So I did research that. Because of the price was so low, you can actually just move the jumper over and boot it and then wait 60 seconds. And there's a beep code that tells you it's cleared. But that is less and less common now, even on desktops.
All right. Well, we've been through what we bought, but seeing as you patrons paid for this, we're going to spin this into 2 episodes. So we'll leave you dangling on how we actually got on with it once we installed Linux and did upgrades and all the rest of it. So we'll be back in 2 weeks with that. But until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Chris.
I've been Gary.
And I've been May.
See you later.